Do you struggle with career ambition? And if that can be a thing that fits in with motherhood, do you struggle with the thought of career ambition getting in the way of doing a great job as a wife and mom? And do you struggle with career ambition as a Catholic mama? These are some of the things we are going to be exploring today with my very special guest, Dr. Janice Breidenbach, today on the Possibility Mom Live. I am so excited for this conversation today because I have followed the work of this wonderful woman, Dr. Janice Brandt, for the last few months because I live in a very special town. I live in the beautiful town of Ave Maria, Florida, which is connected to, or the whole reason it was founded was because of a Catholic university called Ave Maria University. And I had heard about this woman. Someone had described her as prolific, which was a super fun word. So I was like, I've got to meet this prolific woman. And then I heard through the grapevine of the school and the community that she was teaching a course called The Philosophy of Motherhood. And I just was like, oh my word. And so we are going to have an amazing conversation today. I am so excited. I have almost a minor in philosophy at the university I went to. It was like 6 credits, and I think I got like 5 out of 6. Philosophy has always been something really interesting to me. The exploration of thoughts and reason and logic, I just think is very necessary today as we navigate many different things. And so I just can't wait to have this conversation. It's going to be like all kinds of fun. Now, listen, before we get into that conversation about ambition, motherhood, can Catholic motherhood and career ambition fit together? I have got to tell you this story. And to tell you the story, we're just going to pull up this incredible video of an amazing mom of 11 kids doing some pretty incredible things in the world.
Good morning. Allison Renaud dropped out of college to raise, get this, 11 children. But the Oklahoma woman is now back in school in a big way.
The morning scramble. It's the daily race of getting the kids up, fed, and off to school.
They need to make like a 16-slot toaster for me.
Hectic in any household, the Renauds have a challenge unmatched by most. Allison is the mother of 11 children, 7 still at home.
All right, let's load. Let's go. I need number 7, number 9, number 10, number 11 with me. Let's go.
It's been controlled chaos for as long as she can remember.
Better hustle, though.
Endless carpools and decades of diapers. But not a single regret that she left college to marry her husband Dale and raise their family.
When you start raising your children, you get very engrossed in their goals, and you want them the best for your kids. And so sometimes those things just kind of go to the wayside. All right, girls, hands up. Pretty hands.
As the kids were growing, Allison started working outside the home and now owns this gym in Oklahoma City.
It's beyond what most of us can imagine. 11 children, a never-ending round-the-clock job. And then her other job, full-time, here at the gym. But for Allison Reneau, there was still something else. The power of an unrealized dream.
On a morning run, the idea came to her. Already back in college classes, could she, at 50, cut it at one of the biggest names in higher education, Harvard?
It took me a couple of weeks to even call information to get their phone number. I thought, that is so far out that this, not distance-wise, but so far-reaching of a dream, like I didn't feel worthy to call them.
Eventually she did. And look who's walking the Ivy League now. Let's just say it's a bit of a commute. Oklahoma City to Boston once a week. Allison is enrolled in Harvard's extension program and just 3 classes away from full-fledged grad school.
I think when you've dreamed of something for almost your whole life and over 30 years, and you walk onto campus, you walk through Harvard Yard for the first time, it's overwhelming.
Back home, it's nothing short of inspiring.
Seeing my mom, have children and have a business and then go to school, it just makes me want to try new things, and especially when I have a family, to keep keep going after my goals.
Like, come on. I've watched this clip now, like, I don't know, this is maybe the third time I've watched this clip, and I get every single time I have this exact reaction. Watching her daughter talk about watching her mother following her dreams, going to Harvard at the age of 50, like, talk about doing hard things in motherhood. But this clip here is worth like taking some time on. Let's
I'm a Renaud. I'm smart.
Something Allison Reneau has taught her children for years,
Always finish what I start.
she now shows them.
So not only is she going to Harvard at the age of 50, not only does she run her own gym, but she has instilled in her kids this mindset, this attitude of, I'm a Renaud. I finish what I start. I don't quit. I don't know. I cannot clearly, as you can see. Wow. But to add on to this remarkable story, okay, so mom of 11, as you saw there in the Today Show feature that they did on her. And we'll put the clip to that full interview because she shows up in studio and they ask her a bunch of questions after. And it's a really great segment. But to add just another incredible layer to this woman's story. So she managed this gym in her town. She was very involved in her community, it seems. She went to Harvard. And from some of the research I did on this beautiful woman, she also was sitting on the board of a organization that was somehow into robotics, like robotics for girls. And so then it describes in a New York Times article that we'll also put in the show notes that she just had this feeling. She had this feeling that she had to help save this particular group of girls in a robotics club living in Afghanistan. And as we know, we need to just storm heaven for prayers for what is happening in Afghanistan. And so she legit rescued, like she, if I'm not mistaken, flew to Qatar. She relied on a friendship, like a past roommate who had some kind of a job in Qatar, relied on that connection, and that connection allowed her to get visas and passports and all the things necessary to literally evacuate this entire group of girls out of Afghanistan. And I believe, if memory serves correctly, she wants to go back and rescue another 25. So I just, like, if there isn't anything more possibility mom than that, I just, like, oh my word, 11 kids back to Harvard, realizing her dreams, showing her children what it means to work hard and to have a mindset wired for, serving others and doing your best and living with integrity. I just really, I was so impacted by this story, and I had to share it with all of you. So we will put those clinks. We will put those links and invite you to click on them. The clinks. We'll invite you to click the links in the show notes for this episode. And again, what a woman. On to another woman who also attended a Ivy League institution. Now, the beautiful Dr. Janice Breidenbach. I asked her for a bio, but I was like, do me a favor and keep it short. And she was like, do you just want a little bit about my life? And I was like, no. Also list the incredible accolades you have. But let's just keep it on the shorter side. So I am going to read the bio of my next guest, Dr. Janice Brandt. All right. Dr. Janice Chick Breidenbach is Associate Professor of Philosophy at Ave Maria University and member research affiliate of the Aquinas Institute at Blackfriars Hall, Oxford. She holds degrees in philosophy, public policy, and music performance from Princeton University, the University of Texas at Austin, and the University of St. Andrews in the UK. In addition to teaching a wide range of courses at Ave Maria University, including the philosophy of motherhood, philosophy of art and beauty, ethics, and logic, Dr. Breidenbach has given countless public talks in the US and UK, relating to womanhood and feminism, beauty and the home, the philosophy of fashion, marriage and friendship, and bioethics. Her research specialty is in the philosophy of action and law, and she is completing a book on the philosophy of the First Amendment. Previously, she was a visiting research scholar at the University of Oxford and the 2019-20 John and Daria Berry Foundation Fellow and Lecturer at the philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome to the Possibility Mom Live, Dr. Janice Breidenbach.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me on. I'm sorry, I guess that really wasn't short enough, was it? As you're reading, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could have made that shorter. I'm sorry.
You're completely fine.
I tried my best.
I'm so happy to have you here. So we heard your bio, but perhaps you could just briefly share with us here anything that we might be missing. How did you get into the world of academia, and how did you end up where we live in Ave Maria, Florida? Maybe just share a little bit.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, yeah, first of all, let me just say, I'm a huge fan of your videos and the book, which I read as soon as the day you delivered it. I read it. It's really an incredible story, and I think really inspiring. So I think, I wish that more people read that story. And I'm sure you'll include that as a link, right? Or clinks. So, it's interesting. Watching that video, which is really moving too, right? For me, I'm struck by how much love there is in that family, right? And how much love, right? I'm so glad they interviewed that daughter, really. Right, because we can get into this too. The whole topic today, right, of motherhood and ambition and all this, right? Harvard is nothing to sniff at, really, right? But personally, from a young age, I always knew I wanted to be a mom, actually, and I just couldn't wait. I would trail my mom in the kitchen, and I loved, I actually loved doing laundry. She would let me do it, of course, I loved putting stuff away. I loved organizing. I basically loved all the details of homemaking from a really young age. And when I got to college, nobody was dating at Princeton. Nobody, there was just there's no dating culture, right? Why do you need to date when, you can get your hookup, right? Thursday through Saturday night, right? So I kind of avoided that scene and was just studied, when I was in college, and got used to the fact that, there just isn't this culture, right? In which men and women are actually thinking about a vocation of marriage together. And I think I told you this privately, but I guess I'll say it too, that when I got into grad school and I went to grad school, I thought, I hope I might, actually finally get married at this point. I think everyone thinks that, right? If they have a vocation in marriage and they don't find their spouse in college or immediately after college, you think, maybe I'll meet someone in grad school. And I did. I met my spouse in grad school. And in many ways, that's I've always had an open mind towards academia, in the sense that actually directly, I explicitly said to God, right? If this isn't your will, it's, you'll let me know, right? If this isn't your will that I actually finish my PhD, because, some people don't, right? And I actually didn't know if I would finish my PhD. So I don't know. I've always been kind of open-minded about, my career ambition in that sense. I've never said, here's my target. I guess I'm kind of different from the mom in that video, right? Who said, my dream has always been to go to Harvard, right? And right. My dream as a child was to be a happy mom and to write. So I've always been attracted to literature and writing, and then later philosophy. So somehow, I think I've been lucky in that I, didn't start with the question, what are my dreams, right? And dreams that by their very nature, exclude being a happy mom, right? I thought, okay, the dream is to be, to be homemaking and loving being at home and having kids. And then academia just kind of came, it almost felt kind of circumstantial, and it was a good fit for me, right? So, in many ways, I just did what felt like a good fit.
Okay, wait. Hold on, because I just gotta pause and ask the question because I mean Princeton University, like we're talking
Yeah.
community college, not to put down community college, but we're talking like a leading institution. Like what was the, they have like all kinds of minimums. Like when you say circumstantial, maybe just like flesh out what that means, because you could have gone to, again, I'm being comical or playful about community college, but
Yeah.
you could have gone to a local school. You could have gone to, arguably perhaps somewhere that wouldn't be as rigorous. Like you went to Princeton. So how,
Yeah.
what that looks like, or when you say circumstantial, what do you mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a great question. So yeah, I guess you're right. I'm making it sound like I just wanted to be a mom. Why did I even go to college? Why didn't I even bother, right, applying to Princeton? And I guess in a funny way, I never thought that, being a happy mom would be at odds with like, striving for a place like Princeton. Right. And yeah, I guess in that sense, I admit I've always been ambitious. Right. Like I just thought like, let's go for the top. Right. I'm going to apply to Princeton. I got into Yale. Like Yale was actually my first choice because I wanted to do music. Right. But then I fell in love with Princeton. Right. And so that's where I ended up. Right. And in that sense, I mean, it is kind of, I don't know, like maybe serendipitous, right, is more the word, right? Because there's so much like we can't control about life. Right. But I've actually always loved being a student. Right. So that's just sort of like in my character. Right. Can you tell? Right. Like I like books. Right. And I'm nerdy and I have glasses. Right. So I just like enjoy that kind of thing. Right. And it wasn't like, I know like what, like everyone's like, well, yeah, but you're also like from an Asian family, right? So like clearly you had like a tiger mom, right? Who like whipped you into submission with like homework and stuff, right? We have a friend here who says, right, the meaning of Asian is that it's Asian, not Bijan, right? And it's not Cesian.
Oh my gosh.
It's the funniest thing. And I mean, I do have to admit, like my parents were, they let us know like A means excellent, right? But it's not like I got like, like it's not like I got punished if I got a B or a C or something like that, right? I never really got C's, so. So I mean, in that sense, I don't know. Like, I mean, to answer the question, it's sort of like, there's a lot about nature, I think, right, that's working with grace. And I didn't become Catholic until later, right? Like when I was at Princeton, and I'm actually most grateful to Princeton for, right, the people who were Catholic and who introduced me to it. I would say even more so in many ways, and it definitely meant more so, right? Grateful for that than for the education.
Wow.
And I mean, in that sense, like it's like the serendipitous thing where, right, you end up at a place, right, you don't quite understand, right, but it feels right, and it appeals to your talents, and it sort of fulfills you in a way that right, I'm being fulfilled in this way. And so, yeah, so I don't know, like, is ambition, it's not like I always said, like, I have to go to Princeton, it's Princeton or bust, right? It was more, let's do the best, right? Let's aim for the top, right? I mean, let's try to be excellent, right? In whatever, in a way that like also fits and works with like your particular nature, right? The nature that God has given you. So, and I think that like really is how I saw it sort of developing, right? I never wanted to like force myself into something. And I think this lady too, right? Like the video you showed, right? She clearly, like it's not like one day she just like switched from being a mom and said, I want to like go to Harvard, right? She clearly has been working her whole life, right? Toward like in a way that it is totally unified with being a mom. I don't know. Does that seem evident to you too? I mean, I just think like this lady it's not like there's a bifurcation for her. And you can see that in the way like her children are very, like her children are very positive about her being, right, ambitious too.
So before we jump into that, I just want to give a little bit of context to your life, because I do think it's very helpful to this conversation.
Sure.
So you met your husband at grad school.
Mm-hmm.
You are both teachers here at Ave Maria University.
Yep.
And it sounds like, from what I know of your life, there's quite a bit of ping pong, if you will. So like you teach a class maybe in the morning and he's teaching a class in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but both of you provide the primary care for your young son. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. 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 We both do it.
And that's just so interesting and so
Yeah.
fun that you're both
Yeah.
in academia. We have a couple, there are a few couples who work at this university, which again, I just think is
Right.
so interesting and such
Yeah.
a fun dynamic. I mean, and it many practical things involved here. Like
Yeah.
your commute time is less than 5 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
traveling across the city.
Right.
There's access to quite a few babysitters if you need
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things.
It's perfect for a working mom. It really is. And a working dad. Yeah. I mean, we're really grateful to Ave Maria for that. Like very genuinely, like we've, turned down job offers elsewhere at other universities who made it very clear that they're not interested in making in like a spouse, like sort of having like a, two body, two
Two for
professors,
one deal.
yeah, 2 for 1, or like, right. Like it doesn't matter that you're married to someone but I think Ave like really sees us as a package deal, and they recognize the value of, right, having two professors who are married. And, there's a lot of advantages to that. Like from an administrator's perspective, it's like, we're like having nonstop, committee meetings at home, basically, right? Like we're like constantly talking about, right, sort of logistics and like how to like improve this or that, right? We're like swapping pedagogical strategies. I mean, I don't know what it's like to be married to someone who like doesn't understand my job, right? And, and I find that like a really like such a blessing, right? Like not to mention, yeah, like I can literally like walk over in 5 minutes and to my office or to my classroom, and I can meet students, or I can ask my students to come here. Where did you find that photo? Or we love like having students over. We just had one of our beloved students over for dinner this week. I'm having colleagues over today. It's really such a blessing to have like this kind of integration. But yeah, it does mean that you're very enmeshed, right? And like you do like what feels like juggling, but like the way we do it is like he does one day, he has Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and I have Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's also a blessing. I mean, it just means, right, the other days, then yeah, we take care of our son. And it's really interesting because, I've heard like, people might call him like a mom, right? They're like, wow, you're so good at like, no, okay, like he's being a dad, right? And he's a great dad. And I mean, in many ways, I mean, absolutely. I mean, not in many, like it's just absolutely certain that I couldn't do what I'm doing without my husband.
I love
Sort of also, doing what he does as a dad, right? And I think it's very clear to him, and I mean, I think to many guys, right, that like the priority also is being a father, and actually literally being a father, right? Like meaning like being there, right? Like right now he's there so that I can like do this, like so that I can talk to you, right? And not just saying, well, I bring in a salary so that my family can buy whatever they want, right? And that's how I'm a father, right? Which is also, I think, very important to the identity of a lot of men. But, I mean, to me, like I always wanted to marry a man who would actually father, and actually like would be interested in like practically fathering. And that's how we make it work. And he also has a side business. So he actually works more than I do, right? Like he's an incredible person. Like really, it should be like the impossibility dad, right? Someone should write a book on the possibility dad, right?
You mentioned a few times now in our conversation the word unity, unified.
Yeah.
And for many years in my own life, and I know many of the women I coach and who are listening to this now, it just was not a reality. Like I hate to say it out loud. Like I feel some shame when I say it out loud, but for so many years, I felt like my kids got in the way of what I really wanted to do. And again, I know that I'm not alone. And it took me many years of, just my own story. I think it was a better understanding of my own Catholic anthropology. It was a better understanding that it didn't have to look so black and white. Like you have to be just a working mom or just a stay-at-home mom. So for me, it was this journey. But you use this word in a way that I think is challenging. Like I don't think many people view parenthood and career as potentially a unified aspect. In fact, the majority of the conversations I have, people feel like they can be very much at odds. So where did you come to that? And what could that look like for other moms who might feel like that is what I want?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely like the crucial question. And I mean, here, when I talk about like the unity between being a mother and also having this identity, right, of being a professor in my case, I mean, I'm drawing a lot here actually on John Paul II and Saint Edith Stein, right, Teresa Benedicta, who in many of their writings, and so this is like something my students talk about in the philosophy of motherhood course, is right the sense in which like John Paul II and Edith Stein talk about, right, this unity that a woman, right, in particular, like they're talking about mothers in particular, because everyone knows like mothers like have so, right, I mean, as great as like fathers are, right, like it's not like a bodily kind of work, right? I mean, the work of like pregnancy, which you know all too well right now, right? I mean, you've revealed this on YouTube, so I'm not like sort of spilling beans, right? So, right. So congratulations, right? I mean, but like the work, right? Not just of pregnancy, but of like raising a child, right? Is so bodily involving, right? In a way that a man can voluntarily take on, but only in a derived way, right? Like men, and I think most men will absolutely admit to like never knowing what it's like, and also never ever wanting to know what it's like, right? Most men are like, don't, right? I don't even want to try, right? But it's like, it's unimaginable, right? Someone who's not been through that, right? The kind of labor, right? That continues, right? Not just sort of in the laboring room. And what the former Pope, right, and Saint Edith Stein want to say is, right, yeah, we want to absolutely like seek ways in which are like a woman's nature, right, is being fulfilled. And she has to ask, I think like when we talk about discernment, right, like really like the question is, maybe the first question is like, am I flourishing, right? Like, am I happy? Like, this is a very like Aristotelian question, if I may say, right? Like Aristotle is very concerned with like this kind of condition of being like feeling blessed actually, and being blessed, right? Mm-hmm. Even in the midst of like really like difficult work, actually. So like being blessed doesn't mean like I get total solitude. I'm totally, sort of in quiet, I have like hours and hours before the tabernacle, like in adoration, right? That's not what it's meant, right? It's a kind of like a condition of the soul, actually, right? In which we know, like, I am content, right? I am content in this work. I go to bed exhausted, but I'm happy knowing that what I did was worthwhile, right? You keep bringing up these, right? So I think like this sort of, right, question, right, and then asking our families, right, and being very honest and courageous actually about asking our families, like the daughter, right, who's being interviewed, like she seems like very genuine and saying like, I'm proud of my mom, like she really inspires me, right? And these kids are also older, right? So it has to be said that like small children are the most demanding, right? That doesn't mean that like older children are not demanding at all. They are demanding also in other ways, right? And right, Anne-Marie Schlatter, for instance, she was my dean at Princeton. She talks about this very courageously in an Atlantic article that I think everyone should read. Like this is from a very like progressive standpoint, but she admits, she says like my teenage boys, I was not there for them. Like, cause she was like off gallivanting, she was like commuting between Princeton and DC every week, right, to like work for then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And so, right, I mean, we do have to ask ourselves these questions, like I would say almost like on a daily basis. Like, what am I doing? Like, is my family happy? Am I happy? Is my family happy? Is my husband happy? Right? I mean, I think like for us women, like the first vocation is our husbands, right? We ask like, is our husband happy? He's happy in that photo. And then, right, after this first question, right, are we happy? And I think we have to ask ourselves this question first, like, am I happy? Because God wants us to be happy, right? Like the vocation, right, is a vocation to happiness. And right, this is like what the Pope and Edith Stein are trying to emphasize. And Edith Stein and the Pope both also say, right, like it's this kind of questioning. And I think maybe we would also say discernment, right? This is what discernment is. It's like asking ourselves, like on a daily basis, am I flourishing? Is my husband flourishing? Are my children flourishing? Is my community flourishing, right, because of me? And Edith Stein says, at a certain point, right, if the answer to that is no, right, then maybe, right, the woman needs to like sort of take a step back and say, right, like where have I've gone a little too far, or maybe I'm like taking on too many responsibilities, right, outside of the home, right? Maybe there are ways I can change, right, being efficient about things, being creative, right, in the way that I get my work done, right? Maybe I'm being too perfectionist, right? I'm a big fan of what some, like, I think it's economists like call it satisficiency, right? Like just do what's in some things, right? Like you got to do what's like satisficient.
And let's go back to the word happy. Okay.
Yeah.
You are a philosopher, so we're going to have a philosophical conversation. Happy, because I wonder if people might be thinking, well, I'm not happy. Like what for the people who aren't happy, but let me get clear around the question I'm asking. Like, we know that we're not called to every minute of our lives to be happy. We know that. Like, part of the Catholic call of life is holiness. Oftentimes requires suffering. For us to grow, we need to grow in virtue. To reach that beatitude, it requires oftentimes pain. Right?
Yeah.
So I know you're not talking about that kind of happiness where we're always happy clappy and like, it's amazing. But so maybe really the heart of my question about defining happiness is, where does discernment of God's will for your life, like, where does that fit in? And more importantly, how can that look really different for everyone?
It absolutely has to look really different for everyone. I mean, that's because everyone is very different, right? We've got the same human nature. So this is a philosophical answer, if you don't mind, right? We've all got the same human nature, right? Meaning we have the same sort of kind of soul, right? And that means that there's certain activities, right, that are generally going to make us, right, happy in like the really sort of strong sense of the word, right? Not the happy clappy, like I'm feeling a lot of joy, right? Even as I'm like kind of going to the dentist, right? This sort of thing. Everyone is going to have, right, a different set of sort of, you might say, like talents, right? And inclinations even, right? Like what draws me, what is attractive, right? I mean, we don't all marry the same person, right? So, like, no one would expect you to like marry the same kind of person or like get judged for like, well, why did you marry this person, right? Like, right? I mean, that's just like as absurd, right? To say, right, we all like should find the same marriage partner, right? As we should all like sort of be happy in the same way, right? Mm-hmm. So, and this is like a real like recognition of the beautiful diversity, right? And sort of just the multiplication of souls that God wants, right, in the world, right? That He doesn't just want sort of cogs in a machine, right? The church militant isn't like a North Korean kind of militant. It's more like it's more of a, you know what I mean, right? It's more like every soul, right, sort of has its own work, right? Has its own and needs to like sort of pray and discern about how to carry out God's work in the world, right? So yeah, I mean, I think this condition, like really this condition of flourishing, right, is one that's going to come under discernment, under the rubric of like this question, am I fulfilled? Like, are my talents getting actualized and like fulfilled? Like, if I can use more like Aristotelian terms, right? Like, am I like really like, maxing out my capacities, right? And yeah, I mean, absolutely, there are days where I'm like, I am maxed out. Okay, like I'm not dealing with like more temper tantrums, right? I'm like, people think like the terrible twos are terrible, right? Like, well, number 3 is like even more, right? And I've only got 1, right? So like I can only imagine, right? Like what it's like to have 8 with like number 9 on the way, or like 11 kids like going to Harvard, right? And I think like, but that's the thing. That's the crucial thing, is like I cannot imagine, and that's okay. It's not for me to try to imagine what it's like to be you, right? Because I am not you. And I think Lisa, you have more energy than I do. So like, like you probably can do a lot more, right? Like God has given you more kids, right? I mean, and that's the thing, is like God knows each of us, right? And we waited, like we didn't wait, like we wanted to have children like right away, right? And like children didn't come. And like I think God knows, right, that like I'm actually very grateful that I had a few years to like figure out like how to do the teaching thing, like how to be a good teacher and how to prep for classes efficiently. Right, I've got that down now, right? And then, right, I had a baby, and so I think like God just kind of like worked, right, with like sort of what He wanted me to do. And I've always said to Him, look, if it becomes overwhelming, like where I can't attend to the needs of my family and my students are suffering and no one's happy, least of all me, right? I'm just going to quit my job. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not ambitious in the sense that like I'm not totally closed to like quitting my job if need be. I just am. I'm like totally open to it. So
that's an important point you just made in this conversation. So here's the thing. I struggled with this. I still struggle with it, if I'm being really honest, not nearly as much, but I really struggled with feeling like I had to fit a box. Okay. For many years, I was exposed to incredible religious communities, Opus Dei, Rainham Christi, other communities like that, where this is just my personal experience, there was such a strong emphasis in staying home and staying happy. It was almost positioned that way. It was like the whole work of changing diapers, the whole work of vacuuming, every brush of the broom, you know, is a gift to the Lord. And I 100% believe, don't get me wrong. I'm no heresy here. I don't send me angry letters. I 100% believe that. But I always had this pull. Like I just always had this desire to use my creative skills, to use my speaking abilities. And for so long, Janice, I felt like I had to just sort of like pick one box or the other. It took me like, how old am I? I'm 37. Like it took me years to feel like there could be another way, which is why my entire platform is called The Possibility Mom. I just really believe that it's a disservice to ourselves, and it's actually a disservice to God. Like, I don't know if I can phrase it that way, but just in the sense that by putting yourself in a box, self-imposed, right? By willingly putting myself in a box, I was closing myself to what I think the Lord was calling me to. And that's what it sounds like for you. It sounds like for you never had a box. Like for you, it kind of just sounds like you were very happy to be ambitious in the sense of, I'm going to go to schools of excellence and I'm going to strive for excellence. I mean, I turned down Yale. I'm sorry. I
probably shouldn't. I love saying that, but there are Yaleys out there who don't want to say that.
I got to put that on a mug for you. I turned down Yale. But you pursued excellence. It seems like the boxes didn't bother you, or perhaps they did, but you move forward anyway. So perhaps you could address those two things. Number one, why do you think the boxes exist? So number one, I'm curious. And then number two, how can a mom get themselves out of a box and either maybe make a better box or demolish the boxes? Like what do we do? So those two questions I'd love to hear.
Great question. I mean, why do people like boxes? I mean, I guess boxes feel safe, right? I mean, there are these YouTube videos of like cats, like if you draw like a box or a circle on the ground, like the cat like goes and sits in the, and they actually do, it's a very like animal kind of instinctual thing apparently, right? To like want to be like kind of enclosed, right? Like the dog wants to be in a very enclosed like little kennel thing, right? And so in some sense, like we can understand it, right? Like we need to feel safe, right? Like I understand my environment. I have control over my environment. I know who's in my environment, this sort of thing, right? I mean, I'm speaking very, like, this is kind of abstract, right? In terms of, right, someone saying, I know exactly what my ambition is. I know exactly what my dreams are. And right. And right, the children are getting in the way of it, right? This sort of thing, right? I mean, I think that the great thing about our Catholic faith, right, about being a Christian really, right, is that we know that God is just so much greater and wiser, right, than any of us, right, like than our like tiny little menial human minds, right? And right, I can think that I know what the destiny of my life should be, but the truth is that I don't, right? And we should care about this truth, right? The truth is that, right, I am not quite sure, right, what I'll be doing, right, in 10, 15 years. So like when, like, I mean, people love to ask this question, like, where do you see yourself, right? I hate these sorts of questions. I mean, right, like, it's like, who knows, like, where I'm going to be, right? That, I mean, all you can do in some sense is like on a day-to-day basis say, right, am I flourishing, right? Am I serving God? Am I flourishing in that way, right? So it's not really a question of like, do I feel good about where I am in life, right? Which I think is also like a good question, but maybe it needs to be sort of set under that bigger question of like, am I serving God? Because that's ultimately going to be right, the question that satisfies us most deeply, right? And so I just think, I don't know, like, I don't think in terms of, right, I have to pursue this dream, I have to achieve this dream. It's more, right, this is where God has put me. I'm doing a lot of work. I have 100 students this semester. I had 100 students last semester. That's a lot of souls, right? I mean, maybe not all of them think they were positively impacted by me, right? But like, I try to do my best, right? And I do pray for them, right? I know them all by name, right? It takes me a few weeks to know, but like, I have that, and I love that. Like, that's my, I do like care a lot about like the teaching vocation, right? And then, right, I'm also like in my spare time, like when my kid is asleep, like I try to get some writing done, right? Which I also love. I feel like that fulfills me, right? And right, when my kid is awake, right, like one of us, like, or both of us tries to like really like give him, like we're trying to educate him already, right? And we're sort of, I don't know, like I feel like that should be fulfilling in a way, right? I know that maybe right now, like I have to, or right now my husband has to attend to him, right? But he knows that like in an hour or so, he's going to go to his meeting and be fulfilling himself in another way, right? So like, just like to have patience too, like during the day. I don't know. I think that's unity, right? Like having faith and trust in God that, he will allow a mom, he will allow a woman, right, to serve him in all the variegated, like beautifully diverse ways that God calls each individual, right? And for every person that's going to look different, right? And so I'm actually with you about this. Like I think many women have callings, and this is actually not me saying this, is John Paul II saying this, Edith Stein saying this. Many women, right, have talents and actually divine callings, right? That means like God calls them to, right, occupations and to forms of service outside of, right, cooking, cleaning, taking care of children, which by the way, I think also should have a priority, right? I'm totally in favor of, right, actually, I heard a very wise mom also say this once, so I'm repeating it, right? The priority is living people first, right? And if you want to like put the money in the first place towards inanimate objects, okay? So like, you don't need to be the one doing the vacuuming. You don't need to be the one even cooking unless you like it. I like cooking. So like I'm like kind of a control freak about cooking. I won't let my husband do it. He can do it, but I might not eat it, right? Just kidding. Right? So like let other people deal with inanimate things unless you really like that. Try not to be a control freak about the inanimate things, right? But like children, right? Our husbands, right? First of all, right? And our children, right? And then like, all the kin work that women do, which by the way, I think men can do a little more kin work, right? You know what I mean by kin work? Like sociologists talk about like how the kin work is like the work that of say like keeping up social ties, right? Keeping in touch with the in-laws, keeping in touch with like friends here and friends there. Like it's been well documented that women do the vastly like the lion's share of this, right? And for good reason, right? Like we're relational, right? St. Edith Stein gives, reasons for this. We're very relational. We enjoy that, right? But men are kind of missing out too, right? In that, like they can also chip in here. And so like, I think it's part of a woman's like brilliance, right? And her genius to like get people recruited, right? Sort of as part of like these projects that are not just projects that, it just has to be done, right? I mean, these are projects that contribute to the flourishing of everyone, right? Individual, common, I don't know, like does that, so I mean, sorry, to answer your question too, like another one of like this inclination for outside occupation. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying like I would be open, like if I really had to, I would quit my job, which I don't think it will here because like they're so pro-family, at our university in a way that other universities really are not. Like they're totally like, including like my male colleagues, actually, they're like, it's very clear, like everyone has a priority on their family, right? So I don't think it would ever come to that. But I'm totally with you. Like I'm well suited for doing things, right, beyond, right, the household tasks and and I feel that I can do it, right? We're just able to do it, right? And some people are, and some people feel like, okay, this is enough, right? And some people like you and me like think, I can do more, like I can serve, right? And it's not about it's not like this grandiose, like sort of narcissistic thing where you're just like I need to like, I'm so bored or I need to fulfill myself in other ways, right? Like my kids are like boring me to death at this sort of thing, right? It's not quite like that. I think the idea is, right, you're serving society, right? As John Paul II says, right? And finding, right, the ways in which, like, and my own experience is that, like, the vast majority of women I know who are moms are serving society in other ways, even if, you know, and I think, like, being on, like, the school board, contributing, right, like volunteering, it's not just about it's not really about making money. It's about, right, being in public roles and societal roles, like fulfilling yourself in these ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally doable with, yeah.
You know what, you mentioned the word narcissism, and I think that's where maybe when people think ambition, career ambition, I think that's at least that's where my brain automatically goes.
Yeah.
It's, well, if I'm going to be ambitious, it's actually about me. But the thing that I would love to encourage people, and I feel like you and I are so on the same page, is what if ambition was actually about the greatest good you could do?
It is. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, totally. That's totally true. I mean, that, like, and that doesn't mean that, like, a drive for excellence, you know, which, yeah, like, sometimes maybe, like, you know, misguided Asian parents, right, are just like, we just want you to have prestige, right, and you got to have money and you got to have power, right? But actually, like, those things are not bad in themselves, right? They just have to be supernaturalized, right? Like, we have to see those things as goods to be used for God's glory, right? And if God has given a woman or a man the talent, right, to achieve those things, right, for his glory, then that's his will, right? And if God doesn't need my prestige, I don't need it either. That's basically, for me, the bottom line. It's like, if God doesn't need my service in this area, then I don't need to be ambitious in it either, right? But in the meantime, like, because discernment is so, in philosophy, we say, like, epistemically uncertain, right? We say, like, it's a problem of knowledge. It's like, I'm not exactly sure sometimes, like, if I'm on the right track, if I'm doing what God wants, right? So, like, we just have to be open, right, to, right, like, and continue asking ourselves these, what sounds like philosophical questions, but really are just, right, I think, like, the tools that you employ in coaching, probably, right, and discernment, right? Like, these are tools that we need, that are actually absolutely practical in understanding, right, like, sort of at moment by moment, like, what it is that God is calling of us. And what's also beautiful about this is not a fixed calling, right? And, like, we women, I think, know this much more than men, right? We have different seasons of life, right? Sometimes we're pregnant, sometimes we're not. Sometimes there's a tiny newborn, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's a teenager, sometimes it's an empty nest, right? Like, life is just constantly changing, and we know it best because our bodies, like, sort of our bodies symbolize, right, this kind of season of change, right? And so, like, I mean, all the more, I think, women are all too well aware that, right, we need to be sort of on top of, right, these questions, right, this discernment, and, like, coaching can really help, right, for this, right? Spiritual direction can really help for this, right? To try to understand moment by moment, right, right, am I in the right place? And I think that's what discernment is. Very practical.
I could literally talk to you all day, and I want to encourage anybody who has, in our final moments that remain with Dr. Breidenbach, if you've got a question and you want to ask it live, just feel free to put it in the comments and we will bring it up. But I've got two final questions for you. So, Dr. Breidenbach, Janice, can Catholic motherhood and career ambition coexist?
Absolutely.
Great answer.
Do I need to say more?
And then my follow-up question to this is about the boxes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I sometimes notice that there can be defensiveness from either camp, right?
Yeah.
I fell into this hard, like, feeling like I had to defend my position, you know?
Right.
And, you know, we were chatting privately, and you said something really beautiful, or, well, maybe not beautiful, interesting, like, just a very interesting comment, that sometimes it might just be coming from feeling like we have to justify our position.
Yeah.
The defensiveness or the feeling like we have to prove is well, I have to prove, or I have to, in my own mind, justify the right choice. And so, you know, this motherhood is absolutely the right one. And you know, I think I've got at least 2 past episodes, and we'll link them in the notes, where I talk about, who do you work for? I work for God. Like, this concept of God is directing every moment of my career. And then the other one where I talk about just dropping the labels. And, I kind of jokingly say, just forget stay-at-home mom, forget working mom. If you want to adopt a label, take the possibility mom, because that one. But here's the final place I want to land, because I do think this is a really practical and really helpful thing that you can provide a very wonderful answer on. So you are a supernumerary with Opus Dei, and for anyone not familiar,
you're outing me, yeah.
I'm not allowed to. I'm sorry. Oh my God.
No, it's okay. I'm pretty open about it with my friends.
So for anyone not familiar, Opus Dei is a prelature. It's a religious community. It's global, and it's a beautiful, beautiful movement where everyone I have met, basically in Opus Dei, has like a commitment to excellence. There's this sort of ethos in that community, and anyone I've ever met, where you do things with intention. You do it to the best of your ability. If you want to call it ambition, you could call it ambition, but it really is like, if you're going to sweep the floor, you're going to sweep it well. If you're going to intentionality, a diaper, you're going to like finish the job. Like there's just this like beautiful intentionality. So this might sound contrary to the spirit of our whole conversation, but for people who love boxes, because I'm sure there are some people who are thinking, okay, Lisa, Janice, I'm with you. I want to embrace whatever career God wants for me. I want to embrace ambition in that career, if that is his call, and if his ambition is my ambition, all that. But they feel like, practically, like, well, what if I'm at the office then for 6 hours a day? Or what if I'm neglecting my home care duties because I'm doing ambition? Like, I do want to make that point that there are some practical things. So as a person who practices a plan of life, as a person who from what you've shared with me and what I know of you, there are certain things that you ensure get done. What are some boxes, so to speak, that we can check as Catholic moms with ambition that might indicate to us, okay, we're doing okay? You know what I mean? Like, can you list some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think you're right that like part of the spirit of Opus Dei is a commitment to excellence, like doing things well, right? Trying to do everything well. But then you're also right to sort of raise a potential conflict from that, right? Which is that sometimes, right? Like you can't do everything well, right? Like, and you can't, I mean, so I think, this is to say too, that like, I think Opus Dei recognizes that we want to be against perfectionism for its own sake, right? So like the things that I care about doing well, and I think you share this too, right? Is like having a beautiful home, right? Like I really care about the beauty in my home, about it being attractive, well-designed, right? So like, you hire someone who's a designer like yourself, right? Or you like just do some research, I mean, these things matter, right? This matters to me, not for its own sake, not because I'm a perfectionist about it, but because, right, having a beautiful environment actually contributes to our good. Like it sort of enhances my condition of flourishing. It just does, right? Because we're material beings. So it's like stuff like that. Like there are other things that, like, maybe I won't mention what my car looks like at the moment, right? But like, like there are other things, like, yeah, it's not the case that like everything, right, sort of like is perfect or done well. And, I mean, I try to like to the utmost of my ability, like I think teaching, right, is this like really like precious moment, right, spent with these 100 students, right, on a weekly basis, that I can actually have a conversation with them. Like I view teaching as friendship, right? So I want to do that well. Like I want to prepare for that. I want to like pray for them. Other things that we could, I mean, I used to be a musician, and yeah, it's kind of like a source of humility for me, right? But I am no longer the musician that I used to be. Like I just don't have time to practice, right, the violin. I don't have time to practice the piano. I mean, my kid wants certain pieces on the piano. He doesn't want me to play Beethoven all the time. He certainly doesn't want me to play like Cacciatorian and things like that, So like, I just don't get to like play the, but that's okay, right? Like, I think like all of this has to be subsumed. And this is what I like about Opus Dei, or what we call the work, is like it's actually very Aristotelian, right? Because Aristotle talks about the good, right? And he says like, there's no point in trying to be virtuous unless you see the good of being virtuous, right? So like, it's not like we just want to collect virtues the way Ben Franklin did, right? He like kind of said, well, this week I'm going to work on these virtues, the next week, right? And there kind of wasn't like it was almost like, it was a kind of prideful thing, right? There's a prideful way of going about and saying, I'm good, right? I'm justified, right? I go to mass, I go to daily mass, right? I do all these things, right? I do them right, and I do them really well, and I do them better than my girlfriend over there, right? This sort of thing, right? I mean, I just think like that's the wrong way, right, to go about it. And like, we need to think like, what is the good here? And I'm going to focus on those goods. So I don't know if that kind of that answers the question.
A great answer. I love it.
I don't do everything well. So
your time is very precious, and I really want to respect it. But if you want to spend just 1 minute addressing one question here from Zato, I had a random question regarding educating our kids. Would love to hear your thoughts on homeschooling versus parents trying to fix the current public education system. The latter seems so daunting. So Dr. Breidenbach, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. We're planning on homeschooling. We are homeschooling. Like, in my view, homeschooling begins in the womb. I don't know if that sounds crazy, but as we know, babies can hear in the womb, right? No, I mean, I totally agree that the public education system is just, it's a huge mess. And actually, a lot of private schools are also a huge mess, right? What a lot of parents are doing, like, we know we have many friends in various areas of the nation who are kind of coming together as a community and saying, let's form our own school, right? And it's going to be excellent. Like, I know actually a community up near Greenwich, Connecticut, who's forming an Opus Dei school, right, for boys and girls, same-sex education. So there, like in the classical education model, right? These are all like where you have like parents who are invested, and parents should be invested, and parents should be the ones who are the first educators. We're the first educators, and we should have absolutely, right, a say that informs like the way our kids are educated. So the more authority I think we give to parents, the better off we will be. But yeah, we're not seeing that in most school systems, right? It's like you see a lot of antagonism. So it's tough. It's a tough question, but I think I think homeschooling is wonderful. And, but it's maybe not the best fit for everyone either. And, we see a lot of like co-op homeschooling, and not every kid is interested in that either. So again, it's like not everyone's the same, right? One has to discern that as well within one's family.
I mean, and that's, this has been the theme, I guess, on my heart for the last, 6 months, if I'm being honest, this concept of discernment and just sort of blinders up.
Yeah.
The boxes don't have to exist.
Right.
Other people want to live in boxes.
Yeah.
You go over there and be happy. That's so fine for you. But I'm going to discover the box that God has for me. Dr. Janice Brandt, you have been such a delight. We're going to have you back to continue.
Thanks, Lisa. I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
So much more that we could explore. Where can people go to learn more about you?
Oh, I have a website. You can create another clink. Sorry, yeah, you got it right there. So that's more of like my academic website, but yeah, I have other podcasts on motherhood in case people are interested in learning more about the course that I teach on motherhood.
You did a really great one with Danielle Bean from Catholic Mom.
She's so fun to talk to. Yeah, you had her on your show as well. I saw.
Yes,
yeah,
I love that. And yeah, like literally a quick Google search will find many of your other interviews on this topic. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Lisa.
And I can't wait to talk again another time.
Absolutely.
My friends, that was fun. And again, if I can just draw one point out, if I may, it's just to sort of like whatever expression you want to use, stay in your own lane, stay in your own box, like write your own box, create your own box, build your own box, whatever it is you want to say. Like, I really just sort of feel like that has been just the thing in my life and I call it obedience. Like maybe we call it obedience to the box, like, and it's your own box and you can put glitter on it. I don't care. But it's like, if I could just draw one thing out of that spectacular conversation, it's that God's will for your life is unique. And so it should look different than the way somebody else lives their lives. And that's okay. And when the criticism maybe happens, or when you see things that make you question, am I doing what is right? Am I doing what is right for my family? certainly you can go to people for counsel, and I encourage you to, but they've got to be the kind of people who will encourage you at the end of the day to discern what God wants for you and you uniquely. And that is just such an important distinction, whether you share my Catholic worldview or not. We are all called to do something very different with our time here on this planet to make the kind of impact and good and truth and beauty, all the things that we are meant to do while we're here. And so it's going to be unique. And by that logic, it should look unique compared to other people. And so if your car is dirty because you are busy spending time with your children, you know, it's okay. Don't worry about the girl whose car is always clean. And again, we can, of course, grow in the skills and the virtue to clean the car, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, just as long as we are walking that path, you know, of our particular box, our unique box, that's we can hit the pillow with satisfaction at the end of the day, or with peace, you know. Friends, this was a great conversation. I love having this time and this space with you all. And I just invite you to share this episode with a friend. Subscribe to this podcast over wherever you love to listen to podcasts. If you have a reaction to this podcast, I would love for you to tag me on Instagram with what you learned from myself and Dr. Janice. Let's keep this conversation going of what it looks like to authentically live out the will of God in our lives in our motherhood. All right. See you.